Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. So today I'm tackling a question from Avalon on LinkedIn, who was asking about the lack of feedback in submissions and certainly from completing interview procedures. Is it candidates? Is it recruiters? Is it technology? What's at fault and how do we fix it? So Avalon, I'll be honest, it's kind of a mixture of many things and in many different ways. I mean, recruitment's messy, to be honest with you. And the reason for this is because of all the different moving parts and all the different people that are involved in that procedure. So let's explore each one. We'll start with recruiters, and I will be completely upfront and say there are some pretty shonky recruiters out there. There are some that literally are only going to deal with people when there's a price tag associated to them. So they will call you back all the while you're in an interview process. They will call you immediately if you're an amazing fit for the job they're actually looking to hire for. They'll ignore you otherwise. If it's the task they've got to carry out doesn't deliver money for them or doesn't represent revenue for them, they'll deprioritize that in favor of something that does. It's just recruitment. Unfortunately, it's sales directors driving hard-nosed KPIs, and those sales people, the recruiters, are the only people responsible in their job for driving that sales objective. And all the while they're bashed over the head by the sales KPI because money's got to be made, the business has got to be kept open somewhere. They will keep on exhibiting bad habits. It's just unfortunately the problem with the industry. But there are a few telltale signs if you're looking to find or get a red warning that you've potentially got a bad recruiter sat behind things. First thing starts right from the advert. If you're looking at a recruitment advert and it reads like the client job description, do yourself a favour, quick copy and paste a few lines of that into Google, see if it does happen to flag up who that particular client is. You'd be surprised just how many recruiters put so little effort into their recruitment advertising that, and I state this honestly, I've come across recruiters who have even kept the client name in the advert by mistake because they forgot to delete it out. If you do happen to come across this, cut that recruiter out. If they can only be bothered to write 2 or 3 lines that are usually my client, the word leading associated to any business they're working with, using the words fantastic and amazing way too often without actually grounding any of that and providing evidence as to why it's fantastic or amazing, because not every business is. But if they're not being honest and they're not showing any real depth of understanding around that particular client, you've got to be concerned about, is this a shonky recruiter? Are they lazy? If they're lazy in their recruitment advertising, how many other things are they going to cut corners with? How many other things are they not going to bother applying any thought to or acting appropriately with? So try and find the direct client, cut them out. Why not? The other thing is towards the end of the adverts, if you start seeing the red flags of if you don't hear from us in 5 days, then assume your application is unfortunately unsuccessful, or due to the volume of applications we receive, we will only be getting in touch with those people that are successful. If you see either of those, you know you've got a lazy recruiter there. They basically said it in their advert. I'm going to be lazy, I'm not going to talk to you. What you want to find are the ones that put every application will receive a response. You want the ones that are actually prepared to deliver a service whether you're successful or not. Because although the recruiters get paid by the clients, you know, without the candidates who ultimately become line managers, where do they stand? It seems crazy they're not even thinking about connecting the dots on delivering the right level of service there. So that's the recruiters, and yeah, unfortunately there are poor ones out there. Now let's move on to looking at the candidate side of things. Now, I guess depending on where you come into a recruitment process is going to denote the level of engagement potential and influence you'll have on things. So and also the type of feedback you'll get. So if you are just getting an immediate decline on an application, you haven't had any interviews, then it's going to be pretty generic. That's based just on volume, and I suppose it's fair enough. The businesses and the recruitment agencies, they're not going to have the time to give everybody individualized feedback on every just written application without an interview or anything like that happening. Principally because they're just looking at fundamental disconnects and fundamental mismatches with the roles at that stage. So it'll be pretty generic, pretty basic, and it's for speed and efficiency that's delivered, especially when you're in an environment that you're receiving hundreds, if not potentially thousands of applications. Later on, you've done a presentation, you put time, effort and energy into that, you spent hours doing the pre-prep on those bits and pieces. At the latter stages of the process, the quality of the feedback should be much better, but this comes down to really if the line manager is going to provide it and dedicate the time to that, because don't forget, the people they're declining aren't the people they're interested in engaging. They're the people they've lost engagement with and ultimately have decided to move on from. So at times it can be difficult to get the level of feedback really that individuals deserve. We as recruiters and talent acquisition team, I know, do try to get that information, but at times it's just, there is that disengagement that's gone on with the line manager at that stage, and it's hard to get them to buy into still providing a good level of quality engagement at that stage. It happens, unfortunately, and sometimes you can only get quite basic information come through. That's really quite frustrating, but it happens. And then looking at other aspects outside of that, when did you apply? So a recruitment process, typically from briefing out to an external recruitment partner like myself, we'd roughly have a week to present a shortlist, and when we deliver that shortlist forward, those individuals there's a cut-off point, they review them, they identify those they want to meet with, bring them in. If you apply after that point and first interviews are arranged, it's much less likely you're going to get a look in for a little while, basically until after first rounds are finished. And if at that stage they decide to revisit the talent pool to see if there's anybody else that can help strengthen the pipeline going into second rounds, or if there's anybody new that's come through in that time. And that's basically that. They tend to do that, businesses tend to do that, if the pipeline they don't feel is quite as strong, or perhaps if there's nuances that's come out through the interview process at that stage that they recognise they might want something a little bit different. But it does mean that if you've applied between those stages, there will be a pause, and it will feel like you've gone into a black hole, maybe for a few weeks, whilst those interviews get taken care of and dealt with. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of, it happens, and it's a mixture of protecting the line manager's time, who's interviewing, because it is a big time drain on them. Also managing the process efficiently, so hopefully they can draw it down to a conclusion quickly. The best way to describe it is a funnel, and what they're trying to do is get to the end of that funnel as quickly and as well as they can, making sure there's still a good fit for the brief and good fit for the role going on. They'll reopen that funnel and restart again if they don't feel they've got that piece. But what they don't want to turn into is a conveyor belt, because what happens with the conveyor belt situation is the line manager's just keeping an eye out for who's next and who's next and who's next, and they're never getting pushed down that funnel to make a decision, and that leads to a really bad candidate experience. If you imagine you're at the beginning, you're one of the first ones at the beginning of what's turned into a conveyor belt, and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for more people to come in, to keep topping up the amount of people that are there. You end up losing interest and you end up disappearing somewhere else. And when the line manager comes back around and goes, oh, I wanted to meet with that person again, it's been 3-4 weeks and you're bored. In fact, you're irritated. So that's why we try to do these things in these stages, and that's why internal talent acquisition teams and hiring managers more often than not want to buy into sort of a funnel methodology. But it can lead to, if you apply outside of the cycles that they look at the CVs, it can lead to long delays, unfortunately. Then we'll look at technology, ATS systems, and how technology can be a barrier to these things. Now, I recognise doing the applications to all the different ATS systems is a chore, and it's a full-time job just looking for a job. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of energy. Unfortunately, nobody's quite done the money supermarket yet. I mean, LinkedIn gets close with the idea to be able to compare an entire market and do easy application stuff, but nobody's quite there yet. Nobody's done anything like that yet. So I do recognise it takes a lot of time to do these things, but the ATS systems add another layer and another stakeholder, if you like, into the process, and it can lead to complications. Certainly it's because of, and you can see my other video on how ATS Systems operate and how to help you try to get towards the top of the list. But if you're an in-house talent acquisition person, typically if you're working multiple roles in multiple specialities that you're trying to fill for that business, you will lean on your ATS system to help filter and manage some bits and pieces for this for you. So you might filter your advertising response into keyword priority order and then start working down that list until you've got a list of maybe 4 or 5 people you're prepared to put in front of your line manager and go, how are these so they meet what you require. Unfortunately, if you're the next one on that list, when they get to the point of, I suppose, review fatigue and they think they've got enough of a list, you're not going to get looked at. So that's why it's important to ensure that you are actually aware of how ATS Systems prioritize and then how you match up your applications to best give you best ranking results, so you are going to get reviewed. But yeah, the technology can add another layer in there, and especially when you are looking at a high volume of applications like we're experiencing at the moment. People do lean more on those technology systems, and that can be a breakdown in the process. That can slow things down, and it can also be the reason why you get lost in the ether, go into a black hole, because the recruiter goes, I've got enough for now, I'll come back to it next week, but if I need to find some more people, a week's gone by, you've still not got feedback, and that can happen a few times. Just depends on what happens and how that process and how that role orientates, unfortunately. So could be another reason as to why you're struggling with getting feedback. Then there's another piece that can potentially add to the frustration, and it comes back to the recruiter again. This is really around the mentality of what's referred to as first past the post in recruitment, and it's the way that supply works, especially in contingency when there's multiple agencies working a brief. End clients will accept the first CV that goes onto their ATS system or lands in their inbox as a submission from that particular agency. In past years, it had a lot of unethical practice being promoted because agencies that were trying to exploit that system would literally run a search over their database, find people they knew would fit the brief and email them across to the client or upload them onto the ATS system so they had the earliest timestamp. Then they will try and contact the candidate or individual to speak about the opportunity to see whether or not it fits. Hideously bad practice, not officially recognised or allowed by the REC, and any ethical business should do the opposite and go to the person first, make sure they're interested in the job, and then take them forward if they're interested once they've got their consent. But unfortunately, the first past the post piece led to a mad rush for how to get stuff done, and that constant panic mixed with the multiple vacancies that any recruiter will be handling, especially from an agency space, means that they're constantly prioritizing the need to get more CVs out, the need to keep the funnel topped up on the multiple briefs they're handling, as opposed to doing the service piece of going back to individuals and providing them, especially decline feedback, where decline feedback isn't seen as such a productive action. It's not one that can help them hit a sales objective. It's a nice to do. It's something that is a good service action, but good service action doesn't meet their sales objective. Good service action doesn't deliver their commercial targets, and doesn't get those CVs out the door, that drives the funnel, that helps them with getting chances of hitting those sales objectives that the sales directors are beating them over the back of the head with. So that's why service drops away. If people were able to be a bit more considered, they had the time to be able to review things effectively without the pressure of first past the post beating them over the head, it should allow a little bit more interaction without urgency, and so that should hopefully help with improving service elements. But in contingency in particular, first past the post is the most relied upon model by end clients for applicant ownership with any particular vacancy. So until that changes, I'm not sure I'm going to see anything like that change and help to positively influence the service piece. So that's hopefully a bit of an inside track on giving you a view as to what goes on behind the scenes with recruiters and talent acquisition people and how the recruitment processes orientate. Of course, we're putting out content that hopefully helps give a bit more of an insight to the recruitment industry week to week. But if you do have some comments on this or some feedback for us, by all means, please do reach out to me. You'll see my email here, and but also add a comment. I'm really happy to join in conversations, get involved in conversations around these things. And yeah, I mean, if there are opportunities, are ways that you could think that can help improve the industry and stuff that could be done, let's have a debate, let's have a conversation about this, see whether or not we can come up with some great solutions for it. Otherwise, stay safe, everyone. Keep your chin up. The market is picking up on and getting busier on vacancies. So hopefully, if you're not seeing anything now, over the next few weeks or maybe next month, you'll see some stuff coming out that'll be good. So keep safe, keep well, and keep in contact. Thanks, guys. Bye.